Okay. In the meantime,
Yes,
before,
Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhuji.
yeah,
By
as
the
we start, we'll start with the invocation prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे मुखं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंगायते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुदीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्यमीश्वरं नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवत्युत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिके कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नंदगोपकुमाराय गोविंदाय नमो नमः। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Hare Krishna. Thank you everyone for joining today's session. So we will be starting on the verse, starting from the verse number 2.4, second canto, fourth chapter, 28th verse. Okay. So Prashanti Mataji has raised her hand. She would you like to recite the shloka also, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay.
Prabhuji, after you.
Sure, no problem. Please put your hands down because your hand is seen in front of the shloka, so I am not able to read the shloka. You can put your hands down. You can say, whenever anybody wants to read, you can say your name, because if you say I want to read, then I'll not be able to know. I will not be able to identify in the group who wants to read. So you can tell me that, for example, I'm Ram Govind. So Ram Govind, I want to read, something like that. Okay, you tell me your name so that we can give you an opportunity to read the verses. Okay? So this verse, we'll recite the verse. Shriya patir yagya pati prajapatir thiyam patir loka patir dharapati. Yes, Mataji, you can read. You can repeat. Okay, we'll repeat again. Shriya patir yagya pati prajapatir
Shriya patir yajna patir prajapatir
dhiyam patir loka patir dharapati
diyam patir loka patir dharapatihi
patir gatis chandaka vrishni satvata
patir gatis chandaka vrishni satvatam
प्रसीदतां मे भगवान् सतां गति सतां पति
prasidata me bhagavan
प्रसीदतां
satam patihi
yes.
prasidata me bhagavan satam patihi.
Okay, so we'll
Translation.
go.
Shall I
Yes,
read translation, Prabhuji?
yes, Mataji, you can read the translation and the purport. Okay?
Yes, Prabhuji. Translation by Prabhupada ki jai. May Lord Sri Krishna, who is the worshipable Lord of all devotees, the protector and glory of all the kings like Andaka and Vrishni of the Yadu dynasty, the husband of all goddesses of fortune, the director of all sacrifices and therefore the leader of all living entities, the controller of all intelligence, the proprietor of all planets, spiritual and material, and the supreme incarnation on the earth, the supreme all in all, be merciful upon me. Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Sure.
Since Sukadev Goswami is one of the prominent Gata Vyalikas who are free from all misconceptions, he therefore expresses his own realized perception of Lord Sri Krishna as being the sum total of all perfection, the personality of Godhead. Everyone is seeking the favor of the goddess of fortune, but people do not know that Lord Sri Krishna is the beloved husband of all goddesses of fortune. In the Brahma Samhita, it is said that the Lord, in his transcendental abode Golaka Vrindavana, is accustomed to herding the Surabhi cows and is served there by hundreds of thousands of goddesses of fortune. All these goddesses of fortune are manifestations of his transcendental pleasure potency Ladini Shakti, in his internal energy. And when the Lord manifested himself on the earth, he partially displayed the activities of his pleasure potency in his Rasa Leela just to attract the conditioned souls who are all after the Pantha, Magoria pleasure potency in degraded sex enjoyment. The pure devotees of the Lord, like Sukadeva Goswami, who was completely detached from the abominable sex life of the material world, discuss this act of the Lord's pleasure potency, certainly not in the relation to sex, but to relish a transcendental taste inconceivable to the mundaners who are after sex life. Sex life is in the mundane world is the root cause of being conditioned by the shackles of illusion, and certainly Sukadeva Goswami was never interested in the sex life of the mundane world, nor does the manifestation of the Lord's pleasure. Prabhuji, can you scroll the screen?
Yeah, actually, I'm not controlling the screen, so I can. Yeah, I can also only request to
Sorry, Prabhuji.
scroll the screen now. Yeah. Yes. So
Allow any woman. So I'll read from the starting, Prabhuji. Allow any woman to come near him, not even to bow down and offer respects. He never even heard the prayers of the Devadasis offered in the temple of Jagannatha because a sannyasi is forbidden to hear songs sung by the fair sex. Yet, even in the rigid position of a sannyasi, he recommended the mode of worship preferred by the gopis of Vrindavana as the topmost loving service possible to be rendered to the Lord. And Srimati Radharani is the principal head of all such goddesses of fortune, and therefore she is the pleasure counterpart of the Lord and is not different from Krishna. In the Vedic rituals, there are recommendations for performing different types of sacrifice in order to achieve the greatest benefits in life. Such benedictions, as the result of performing great sacrifices, are, after all, favors given by the goddess of fortune, and the Lord, being the husband or lover of the goddess of fortune, is factually the Lord of all sacrifices also. He is the final enjoyer of all kinds of yajna. Therefore, Yajnapati is in the name of Lord Vishnu. It is recommended in the Bhagavad Gita that everything be done for the Yajnapati. Yajnatat karmanaha, for otherwise one's activities will be the cause of conditioning by the law of material nature. Those who are not freed from all misconceptions, Vyalikam, perform sacrifices to please the minor demigods, but the devotees of the Lord know very well that Lord Sri Krishna is the supreme enjoyer of all performances of sacrifice. Therefore, they perform the Sankirtan Yajna, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, which is especially recommended in this age of Kali. In Kali Yuga, performance of the other types of sacrifice is not feasible due to insufficient arrangements and an expert priesthood. Mataji, can you scroll up?
So this is a very long purport. So Mataji
Yes,
has to put
Prabhuji.
a lot of effort. Yeah. Okay, can
Yes,
somebody else read? I think Mataji read. I think
Yes, Prabhuji.
somebody else can.
Should I read,
Maybe
Thank you,
somebody else.
Prabhuji. Thank you,
Should I read
Prabhuji. Hare
Shilpa
Krishna.
Mataji?
Yes, Mataji. Shilpa.
Hare Krishna. Living beings are proportionately endowed with.
I think we have information. She was
sorry.
supposed to.
Yes,
Yeah.
We have information from the Bhagavad Gita 3.10 and 11. The Lord Brahma, after giving rebirth to the conditioned souls within the universe, instructed them to perform sacrifices and to lead a prosperous life. With such sacrificial performances, the conditioned souls will never be in difficulty in keeping body and soul together. Ultimately, they can purify their existence. They will find natural promotion into spiritual existence, the real identity of the living being. A conditioned soul should never give up the particle of sacrifice, charity, and austerity in any circumstances. The aim of all such sacrifices is to please the Yajnapati, the personality of Godhead. Therefore, the Lord is also Prajapati. According to the Katha Upanishad, the one Lord is the leader of the innumerable living entities. The living entities are maintained by the Lord. Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman. The Lord is therefore called the Supreme Bhrita or maintainer of all living beings. Living beings are proportionately endowed with intelligence in terms of their previous activities. All living beings are not equally endowed with the the same quality of intelligence, because behind such development of intelligence is this control of the Lord, as declared in the Bhagavad Gita 15.15. As Paramatma, Super Soul, the Lord is living in everyone's heart, and from him only does one's power of remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness follow. Mataha Smrita Janmanam Apohanam. One person can sharply remember past activities by the grace of the Lord. One person can sharply remember past activities by the grace of the Lord, while others cannot. One is highly intelligent by the grace of the Lord, and one is a fool by the same control. Therefore, the Lord is Dhyampati, or the Lord of intelligence. The conditioned souls strive to become lords of the material world. Everyone is trying to lord it over the material nature by applying his highest degree of intelligence. This misuse of intelligence by the conditioned souls is called madness. One's full intelligence should be applied to get free from the material clutches, but the conditioned souls, due to madness, only engages his full energy and intelligence in sense gratification, and to achieve this end of life, he willfully was common only all sorts of mysteries, commits all sorts of mysteries. The result is that Hare Krishna Subbarao Prabhuji. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
The intelligent, okay. That is the instruction in Isha Upanishad. Was I wrong? Everything we see in the material manifestation is but the creation of the Lord. Therefore, he is the real proprietor of everything in the universes. The conditioned soul can enjoy a fragment of this material creation under the control of the Lord, but not self-sufficiently. This is the instruction in the Isha Upanishad. One should be satisfied with things awarded by the Lord of the universe. It is out of madness only that one tries to encroach upon another's share of material possessions. The Lord of the universe, out of his causeless mercy upon the conditioned souls, descends by his own energy, Atma Maya, to re-establish the eternal relation of the conditioned souls with him. He instructs all to surrender unto him instead of falsely claiming to be enjoyers for a certain limit under his control. When he so descends, he proves how much greater is his ability to enjoy, and he exhibits his power of enjoyment by, for instance, marrying 16,000 wives at once. The conditioned soul is very proud of becoming the husband of even one wife, but the Lord laughs at this. The intelligent man can know who is the real husband. Factually, the Lord is the husband of all the women in his creation, but a conditioned soul under the control of the Lord feels proud to be the husband of one or two wives. All these qualifications, as the different types of Pati mentioned in this verse, are meant for Lord Shri Krishna, and Sukadev Goswami has therefore specially mentioned the Pati and Gati of the Yadu dynasty. The members of the Yadu dynasty knew that Lord Shri Krishna is everything, and all of them intended to return to Lord Krishna after he had finished his transcendental pastimes on earth. The Yadu dynasty was annihilated by the will of the Lord because its members had to return home with the Lord. The annihilation of the Yadu dynasty was a material show created by the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, the Lord and the members of the Yadu dynasty are all eternal associates. The Lord is therefore the guide of all devotees, and as such, Sukadev Goswami offered his due respects with love-laden feelings. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, thank you.
Hare Krishna, thank you to the Matajis who read this purport. I think this is one of the longest purports in Bhagavatam. One of the longest. I'm not saying this is the longest, but it may be one of the longest because you had a lot of information to cover. Okay, so anybody wants to give the background before this? We start discussing on this verse. Anybody wants to give a background of what you heard yesterday? Okay, who is talking here in this particular verse? Who's the speaker?
Sutta Goswami.
Sukadev Goswami.
Sure. Who's speaking? Is it Sutta Goswami or Sukadev Goswami?
Sutta Goswami is telling about the
Sutta
about
Goswami.
Sukadeva Goswami.
Yeah, but actually the speaker here is who's glorifying? Yeah, the glorification is made by Shukadev Goswami. Although this glorification is remembered by Shukadev Goswami, Sutta Goswami when he's speaking to the sages at Absolutely. Absolutely. So actually the pastimes are getting remembered and spoken. So it is nothing but hearing and repeating what has been heard already. Okay. So now what we have to understand, the sequence is very simple that, we have seen first Maharaj Parikshit gets cursed by a Brahmana boy. Then Shukadev Goswami, is nominated as the chosen speaker who is going to enlighten whom? Parikshit Maharaj, correct? So then that was how the previous canto, the first canto ended. And then the second canto began, wherein there was discussion about different stages of God realization. And why there was a discussion about God realization is because Parikshit Maharaj wanted to know what needs to be done at the time of
Death.
Okay, so we'll all repeat this verse together in the second canto, first chapter. I'm just picking up some very important verses so that the mood is set right, and then we can continue from today's verses. Okay. Etavan Sankhya Yogabhyam. Etavan Sankhya Yogabhyam. Can all of you repeat?
Etavan Sankhya Yoga.
Etavan Sankhya Yoga.
Ekanam Sankhya Yoganam.
Swadharma Parinishthaya.
Dharma
Parinishthaya.
Janmalabha Parapumsam.
Pumsam.
Ante Narayana Smriti. So in the first chapter, I'm just picking some of the important verses which we need to know. And the first thing is what is mentioned here, the highest perfection of human life. In this verse, what we just recited, the biggest, see, whatever activity you do, are you expecting some profit out of it? Like you're spending some time on this call now, okay? You're spending your time, you're putting a lot of, you need to have patience. Speaking is a different activity, but hearing is a very tough activity, correct? How many of you agree? Is speaking easy or hearing easy?
Hearing is
Hearing is easy.
Hearing,
But if the
hearing.
hearing is if the hearing is for 7 days non-stop, is it possible?
Use focus.
Difficult.
No, Prabhu. Not easy.
So we have to understand that what is the expectation from human life? Till the end of life, Satatam Kirtayantu Mam. Continuously, 24 hours, we should be engaged in the service of the Lord. So is it possible?
Difficult, Prabhu.
Difficult, but yes, the process has been set. It is very clear that there are different activities that we need to perform in devotional service. Like, what are the activities? In a day, Srila Prabhupada didn't say, keep chanting 24 hours. He could have said that, correct? Ultimately, we have to keep remembering the Lord. That means we can keep chanting 24 hours. But what did he say? Did he give us many other activities also?
Yes, Prabhuji.
What are the other activities which have been given?
Mangala Arti, Prasadam cooking,
Tulsi Aarti. Tulsi Aarti.
Hearing,
reading
reading,
Srimad Bhagavatam,
Bhagavatam.
Kirtan.
Associating
with devotee.
Offering Bhoga.
Association.
Offering
Okay.
Bhoga, Prabhu.
So we all agree that there are so many services which Srila Prabhupada has given. Now the most important thing, Srila Prabhupada said, out of all the instructions that are given, the two important instructions, most important instructions are chanting 16 rounds,
chanting
And
and hearing of
listening to
Srimad Bhagavatam.
chanting 16 rounds and following 4 regulative
Chanting and
principles.
book distribution.
Chanting 16 rounds and following 4
Following
regulative.
4 regulative principles.
So the point here is that to make your life successful, the foundation principles will be you have to follow the 4 regulative principles and you have to keep chanting. But the point here is that we know that we have to keep chanting. But is it very easy for somebody in a neophyte stage? Is it easy if you tell somebody keep chanting 24 hours? Will it be possible for him to chant?
No, Prabhu.
No, Prabhuji.
Prabhu.
But if you see some activity of your interest, if you have some activity which you like a lot, for example, some people like to sing, and it may be his passion that he wants to sing. Somebody may be a researcher, he wants to be a scientist. Nobody has to tell him that please learn science, please learn how to do research. Nobody has to tell him because it is his natural interest. Correct? Now, if somebody has natural passion towards music, nobody has to force him to learn music. Or somebody else has some passion for programming, software programming. Nobody has to force him. He does it naturally. That's why it is said the Shreyan Swadharma Vigunaha Paradharma Swanishtadat, which means that if you, by nature, you are bound to do some activities. Okay, that is what you will do. For example, Arjuna, he was a Kshatriya. By nature, he was supposed to fight, and he will fight at any cost. And that's what Krishna also says, that even if I say anything else, if I recommend any other process to you, the entire Bhagavad Gita, there have been discussions on various topics, different types of yogas. But at the end, what did the Lord recommend to Arjuna? Did he say go and meditate, do Ashtanga Yoga? Or did he say
Bhakti,
do Jnana Yoga? What did he say?
Bhakti Yoga.
Bhakti Yoga.
Bhakti Yoga, follow
Why
Bhakti
teaching me to fight, Raman? To
Do your
fight,
duty.
do your duty. Yes.
To
Why
follow the
teaching me in
Nishkama
mind?
Karma Yoga.
Yes, but now is Bhakti Yoga fighting, shooting arrows? Is it Bhakti Yoga?
No, Prabhuji.
Are you sure?
The God tells,
Bhakti.
Krishna tells Arjun
Anything,
to,
anything which God expects, we have to do, Prabhu. That is Bhakti Yoga.
He told to surrender.
So what is Bhakti?
do
Performing
things
all
that
our
will
activities,
please the Lord.
keeping Krishna in center.
Yeah. So
Any
the most,
activity that we perform should be
yes,
in relation to Krishna or with Krishna.
It should be pleasing to the Lord.
Pleasing to the Lord.
absolutely. So
Remembering the Lord.
Bhakti means Bhakti Yoga means linking with the Lord through the process of devotion. That is Bhakti Yoga. Okay. Now linking with the Lord or following the instructions of the Lord, that is very important. So here we have to understand that the instruction which was given by Krishna to Arjuna was to fight. So that in the battlefield, if Krishna has asked you to fight, and specifically you as an individual, if Krishna has asked you to fight, then that is devotional service to Krishna. You are rendering loving devotional. You are not questioning him. Why should I fight? Krishna has said, after explaining everything, Krishna gives freedom to Arjuna to choose, but the expectation is very clear that Arjuna has to fight. Okay. Now, that is nothing but rendering devotional service to the Lord in the matter of Arjuna. But can we all go and fight in the Kurukshetra? If somebody is not following, for example, somebody is not following the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, can you take an arrow and go and shoot him?
No.
No.
We can't. So the point here is that we have to understand that each one should know what is the highest goal, what is the highest perfection in our life. That is the reason why we've been given Shastras. And now, what is the highest goal which has been described here? Ultimately, see, even if you fight or you sit and meditate or you do anything, what is the goal? The goal is to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead and ultimately remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ante Narayana Smriti. That is why we read that verse. So the entire Bhagavatam has been discussed. Why?
To remember the Lord, Prabhuji, at the
Yes, to
time
remember
of
the
death.
Lord at the time of crisis. And what is the time of crisis which is there in our life? What will be the biggest crisis in our life?
Death.
Birth
Yes.
and death, Prabhuji.
And at that time, you should be steady to remember the Lord. And even if you don't remember, if throughout your life you have put in enough effort in trying to remember the Lord Himself will give you the remembrance. So you should not worry about it. Now we'll read one more verse. Okay, we'll all repeat. Tadaham te vidasyami. Tadaham te
Tadaham
vidasyami.
te vidasyami.
Mahapaurushiko Bhavan. See, I'm not reading from the screen. So you have to hear attentively and repeat.
Mahapaurishiko Mahan.
Yasya Shraddhadhatamaso. Yan Mukunde Matistati. Okay, so now what is happening? The ultimate, we discussed that the ultimate goal of our life is to, what is it? Ante Narayana Smriti, which means that whatever activities we do, ultimately, if we don't remember the Lord, then it is just a waste of time. But if you're doing spiritual activities and somehow or the other you forget to remember the Lord at the time of death, still there is no loss. So you continue in the next life from where you left. So unless devotees, unless you are not speaking, please be on mute. If you're speaking, you can unmute. Okay. So the point here is that Ante Narayana Smriti, that is the goal. Okay. Now why Shukadeva Goswami has to speak all this to Parikshit Maharaj? Because he wants to come to a conclusion that ultimately you have to remember the Lord. And is it easy to remember the Lord? It is not easy. So how should you remember the Lord? Shravanam Kirtanam. There are Navada Bhakti, the procedure. But starting is hearing. Okay. Now we just repeated, all of you just recited a verse, which is Tadaham te vidasyami, Mahapaurushiko bhavan, yasya shraddhadatamasu, Syanmukande matis sati. So what happens if you have to chant, if you have to read or hear, hearing is very tough. Just now all of you accepted. Why hearing is tough? Hearing is very interesting if it is 1 hour, 45 minutes. Srila Prabhupada says, not only that, I think it is also proven by science that the attention span of a human being is 45 minutes. If you see Srila Prabhupada's lectures, they're all restricted to 45 minutes or less than 45 minutes. Okay. So now the point is, if you exceed 45 minutes, what happens? What
Mind
happens if
gets
you...
attention is gone, Prabhuji.
Mind gets
Attention
The
on
mind
mind.
is like a monkey. It will keep jumping here and there. You know, it just wants, it cannot sit at one place. Self-control is very difficult. Self-control. We are not even controlling others. We are just controlling ourselves. That itself is not possible because the mind wants to jump. Enough, you know, why are you sitting and hearing this so much? It is not, it's the same thing. Every day you repeat the same thing. Ante Narayana Smriti, Ante Narayana Smriti. In the end, you have to remember the Lord. Finish. When the time comes, let's see. Mind, now lets me jump. Let me watch IPL match. Let me watch something else. Let me see what's so tasty today in the breakfast. Or something. Or, you know, I will do some work. Something will keep running in the mind. And you should remember one thing, whenever we are doing a spiritual activity, that is the time when all the things which we are pending, which is the pending tasks, all those pending tasks starts coming into our mind. Have you tried this? Especially when you're chanting, correct?
Yes,
Yes,
Prabhuji.
Prabhuji.
Me too.
But like I said, if you are a swimmer, very passionate about swimming, or you're a cyclist, very passionate about cycling, or you're some musician, very passionate about music, can anything distract you? If you're doing something which you're very passionate about, can anyone distract you? Is it possible? Even if they distract, what will be your natural tendency?
To bring it back.
Again, bring it back.
Yeah, to continue.
You will want to go back to that. Like somebody likes eating, you can see on YouTube, many people are food bloggers. They just go keep eating everything on the roadside. We don't know who has washed the plates, or they wash the plates, or they cook the meal properly, or nothing. But they want to show that I'm a foodie. I want to eat everywhere. So now the point is, nobody can stop him. He can keep going and eating everywhere he wants. So does anybody has to remind him that please go and eat? You know, today you have to load a food blog, so please go and eat something. No, he's naturally interested in eating. Somebody is interested in vehicles. You don't have to teach him. He naturally researches and tries to understand. But then how will you develop interest to Krishna? Because we are in the material world. All the Maya, all the things that are false looks very attractive to us. Then how do we develop that how do we develop that interest? That is what we discussed just now. Okay. So here Shukadeva Goswami is saying that I'm just repeating that Srimad Bhagavatam, which I heard, and I'm going to repeat it as it is, so that by hearing and by giving full attention, and by hearing, what happens? You develop unflinching faith to the Lord, in the Lord. The most important thing here is we hear the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, but if you're still not confident that Krishna will protect me in any circumstance, we have heard the entire, we have seen how Krishna protects all his devotees. We have heard in Bhagavad Gita also, there are enough shlokas which Krishna has given where it says that Krishna will protect you. Yoga Kshemam Mahamyam. He does the best thing for you. And we know everything. We know he's the master of the senses. He can control our senses also. If we are very dedicated, devoted to him, engaged in devotional service, everything can happen. But still, faith has to be developed. And for that, you have to hear. And hearing is the first quality. Okay. Next, now let's all repeat this verse. This was from the second canto. I'm just repeating the important verses. Okay. Ayur harati vaipumsam. Ayur harati vaipumsam. Ayur harati vaipumsam.
Ayur harati vaipumsam.
Udyan astam chayan asau. Udyan astam
Udyam asho.
Tasyarte yat kshano nita. Tasyarte yat kshano nita.
Tasyate tarkshano nitah.
Uttama shloka vartaya.
Shlokavataya.
So today is, what is today's date?
20th April.
What
Amongst
is yesterday's date? 19th. Okay, all of us know that. Now I'm not asking you because to
20th.
memorize the date. I'm just telling today's 20th. The sun has already risen. If you're in India, it has already risen, correct?
Yes, Prabhu.
That means one more day in your life is gone, out of your life. Ayur harati vai pumsam, udyan astam chayan naso, which means that every time the sun rises or sets, you should understand that one more opportunity is gone. Okay, but that opportunity is not gone for whom? Who does not lose the opportunity?
Devotees.
Devotees who always remember.
Uttama shloka vartaya, a person who is always busy discussing topics about
Uttama Shloka.
Uttama shloka. Why? But here there is no mention of Krishna. Does it say that, in this verse, does it say anywhere that you have to speak about Krishna? It says, Ayur harati vaipumsam udyan astancha yanasau tasyarte yat kshano nito uttama shloka vartaya. That's what it says. It does it say anywhere? Does it say anywhere that you have to remember Krishna or speak about Krishna? Uttama shloka vartaya, which means that it says, speak about the topmost confidential knowledge. Or uttama shloka vartaya, speak about the topmost knowledge or speak about the topmost thing. That's all it says. So then from where are we saying that, it's about the personality of Godhead or it is about Krishna? Each day the sun is rising and setting. And during that time, what should we do? We should speak about the Lord. But in the verse, it doesn't say that, you have to speak about the Lord. It says that uttama shloka vartaya. So the point here is that what is uttama? Tama means what?
Uttama means best.
The topmost.
Tama means what? Tama. What are the three modes of material nature?
Ignorance.
Ignorance.
Tamoguna means darkness. Darkness. Like, you switch off the light, or when the sun sets, what happens? Naturally, it becomes dark. But when you switch on the light, what happens?
Yes,
Light.
the darkness goes away.
The darkness is removed. That's why Uttama means, Tama means darkness. Uttama means that light which can brighten, which can remove the darkness from your life. That is Uttama. So Uttama Shloka Vartaya. So if you want to remove darkness from your life, what should you do?
Should talk about the Lord continuously.
The darkness here, what is the darkness that we are talking about here?
Ignorance. Darkness of the material miseries.
Maya, all the unwanted things that we do and we glorify ourselves, or we want to achieve name, fame, whatever. We are working hard to satisfy our senses. All this is nothing but Maya. But after doing all this, if you didn't glorify the Lord, then there is one more verse which says that you are just like a frog. You're just like a frog. What does a frog do?
He croaks and attracts his enemies in
Attracts enemies.
It does not make a sweet noise. It makes a very. How many of you have heard the frogs making sweet sound?
doesn't.
Yeah. So can you keep? So you can people keep birds in their house. People keep dogs in their house. All the dogs don't sound so sweet, but still, they behave sweetly. So people want some kind of reciprocation. So whatever reciprocates with their senses, they keep all those animals as pets or birds, for that matter. Correct? What do you keep an elephant in your house as pet? Will you keep a donkey? Will you keep a donkey? Everybody will say, I've got a Labrador, I've got German Shepherd, I've got Golden Retriever. Will you say, I've got donkey in my house?
No.
So the point is, you will keep what is very pleasing to you. It should satisfy you in somewhere. Like somebody's husband is disturbing the wife is disturbing the husband, parents are disturbing the children. Then you keep one dog, because what the dog will do, it will remove the disturbance from your life. It will wag its tail. Whatever you say, it will keep wagging its tail. So you feel very happy. At least somebody is there to listen to me. Similarly, somebody who likes very nature and natural things, he likes to hear the pleasing sound of the birds. So then he keeps the birds in his house so that he can hear nice, and he also feels that I am controlling this bird. But the bird wants to be free, and the bird is actually crying. But we are happy that okay, I'm controlling this bird. Okay. So now the point here is that why did I say all these things? Ante Narayana Spruti, or how to develop by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, faith is established. Then what else did I say?
Uttama Shloka Vartaya.
Uttama Shloka, which means when you talk about the Lord. And if you don't talk about the Lord, then you're nothing you're just like a frog. It keeps making crow, crow, crow. Finally, what happens? That sound is not beneficial to everyone. It doesn't give pleasure to anyone, but it gives pleasure to one. One individual, it gives a lot of pleasure. Who's that?
Senses.
Frog enemy. Okay, frog.
The snake feels very happy. Now, the frog is calling me. So the snake feels very happy by hearing the sound of frog. And
Frog.
now my dinner is ready or my breakfast is ready. That the snake knows. And the frog is making that useless sound. The snake knows that now my breakfast, lunch, or dinner is ready. Okay. Now, in our context, what does the snake and frog refer to?
Frog is we and Maya is.
Maya is snake and frog.
Okay. Any other answers? What does snake and frog refer to in our context? Each of our lives, daily, we have a snake and frog. What is that? Daily, there is a snake and frog in our life. Daily. So, can you tell me what is it?
Whatever is our weakness,
Material,
that
material
weakness
yeah, material weakness.
is the
So,
frog.
Hating ourselves.
Uttama shloka vartaya. Okay. And if we are not talking about the Lord, we are simply inviting death. We are talking nonsense and the death is getting closer. Talking nonsense, death is. Even when we are talking about the Lord, I'm not saying that if you talk about the Lord, or somebody might say, what a useless fellow. He's telling, okay, you keep reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, then, will the death not come near? It will, obviously, everybody is going to die. This is Dukhalayam, everybody, Dukhalayam Ashashvatam. And this is Mrityu Loka. You have come here to take death. Who asked you to come here? We have come here. We know that, okay, this is a place where I'll get death. If you go to jail, what will you get? Will you get to watch movies? Will they say, okay, today a new movie is releasing, please come and watch all of you? Will they do that?
No, Prabhu.
It's not possible. The point is you came to the wrong place and you're expecting the best of things here. It will not happen. So now the point I'm saying is snake is like Kala Sarpa. Okay, it is waiting. And it is like it is death waiting for the individual who's just croaking, making that noise. Whatever, I don't know how the frog makes the sound, but however the frog makes the sound, it is very pleasing to the snake. It knows that, okay, I'm coming. So like that, when we are talking nonsense, which is not all useless conversations, which is of no benefit to myself, forget benefit to others. At least when I talk, it should be beneficial to myself. Do you agree or not? Do you want to talk things that are beneficial? So then we should not be like that frog. We have to be very careful of what we talk. And what should we talk?
Glories of the Lord.
Uttama shloki.
Glorify Krishna and Uttama Shloka.
Okay, so having said that, today's verse, in today's verse, what is the word that you see repeating regularly in this verse? It's repeating everywhere, in every line it repeats in this verse.
Pati.
Pati. And you see the beauty of Srila Prabhupada's translations, especially the meanings. He is not even maintaining the same meaning. Pati the owner, Pati the director, Pati the leader, then Pati the master. And like Pati the head. You see this, okay? Can anybody, if somebody gives you one word and asks you to give 10 meanings, can you give? But Srimad Bhagavatam is so perfect that it can give.
1 minute.
Yeah, one word if you give and ask you to give 10 meanings. Here, Pati the owner, Pati the master, Pati the director, Pati the director of the master of the intelligence, and everything. All those things are repeated here. The word Pati is repeated here. So who's that Pati?
Lord.
The Lord.
Supreme Lord.
Supreme Personality of God.
Yes. So he is the Pati. Okay. Now we have to understand here that in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is explaining that he's protecting so many dynasties. Okay. Forget dynasties, he's protecting all the universes, the entire creation he's protecting, not just the dynasties. But we have to understand that here there is one particular word which says Gata Vyalikas. Okay. So what is the meaning of Gata Vyalikas? Gata Vyalikas. When you read this purport and somebody asks you the meaning of this word, Gata Vyalikas, is it possible to tell what is Gata Vyalikas? Anybody knows? Here it says.
Who are free from all misconceptions.
Absolutely. It's written there. It's written there. Okay. But if you see the word Gata Vyalikas, and when you combine it, if you see, do you see that in the shloka? Is this word seen in the shloka? If you scroll up, do you see this word Gata Vyalikas? Do you see it in the shloka?
No, Prabhu. No, Prabhu.
So Prabhupada is mentioning one separate thing here. He's saying that Sukadeva Goswami is Gata Vyalikas. Why? Because he's free from misconception. He has no doubts, and only a person who has no doubts can give you knowledge. If a person himself is in doubt, can he give that knowledge to you?
No.
No.
So the word Velikam, it comes many places in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it comes in many verses, Velikam. Okay? Velikam means something which is false or something which is a misconception. Like we may think that a person is like this, an individual, we may have a conception about a person that he is like this. But actually, it may be a misconception. We may really not be sure whether he is really like that or not. That is misconception. Thinking something that does not, that he is not, or she is not, or that subject is not. So that is false. It is not the truth. So here, Shukadeva Goswami is called Gata Vyalikas. Now, he is free from misconception. He has no doubts. Okay. Now, we have to understand the word Gata is added here. So Vyalikam means in the purport, in the same purport below, if you scroll down, at one point, Srila Prabhupada says, Vyalikam means misconceptions. This Srila Prabhupada says in this purport. But he doesn't say Gata Vyalikam. So we have to understand that in Bhagavad Gita, there is one verse which says, Yata Yamam Gata Rasam. Okay, you heard this verse? Yata Yamam Gata Rasam. So Gata Rasam. Yata Yamam Gata Rasam. Rasam means what?
Nectar.
Taste.
Tasty, very tasty. And the opposite of tasty?
Bitter or not tasty.
Not
Not
Tasteless.
tasty.
Not tasty. So similarly, Vyalika means we just spoke 10 times about
Not
it.
tasty, something that is not.
Something which is
Vyalika means
false.
misconception, and Gata Vyalika means something which is not a misconception, which means that which is truth. So Shukadeva Goswami is one of the prominent Gata Vyalikas, which means that he speaks only
Truth.
Truth.
that is why he's been chosen to speak about the personality of Godhead, especially when you have to discuss something which is very confidential and where you have very less time left and you have to understand the topmost goal of life, then you should know from where to hear, from whom to hear. So here, Shukadeva Goswami has been chosen for this particular reason. Similarly, in this particular verse, we can understand that there are the different types of Shaktis which are mentioned. Okay, where is it mentioned? If you see the fifth line, the sixth line, all these goddesses
Aladin
are for sure.
Shakti.
Yeah, all these goddesses, you can just highlight that, Mataji, if you can. The fifth line in the purport, it says, all these goddesses of fortune are manifestation of his transcendental pleasure potency, or the Ladini Shakti, his internal potency, internal energy. So, what are the types of energy Krishna has?
Three energies.
Nandini,
internal energy,
and marginal.
internal energy and
external,
marginal energy.
What are the three energies?
Internal, external,
Internal,
marginal.
external, marginal.
Internal and
Antaranga Shakti.
Tatastha, Bahiranga,
Antaranga Shakti,
Antaranga.
Tatastha,
Antaranga and
Bahiranga,
Bahiranga.
Tatastha and Aladin.
Where is Ladini Shakti then?
Internal.
Internal potency. Yes, that means
Internal.
Antaranga Shakti of the Lord is also classified into three, which is Samvit Shakti, Andhini Shakti, and Ladini Shakti. The marginal potency of the Lord, which is Tatastha Shakti, which means the Jivas, individual souls like us, we are the Tatastha Shakti. And Bahiranga Shakti, the external energy of the Lord. How will you identify that something is the external energy of the Lord? Any activities which has Sattva, Raja, Tama. Okay, that is nothing but happening because of the external energy of the Lord. The Lord does not get entangled in the modes of material nature. It is the external energy of the Lord which is engaged in the modes of material nature. So if we are getting trapped in the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance, that means that we are actually controlled by the external energies of the Lord, because we are not interested in participating in the pastimes of the Lord. So we are controlled by Sattva, Raja, and Tama. Okay. Next, in the same verse, the root cause of all our existence. What is the root cause of all our existence? Why are we called as a conditioned soul? What is the root cause?
Our
Forgetfulness
desires
of
and
Krishna.
forgetfulness
We
of
want to
Krishna.
love
Desires.
Prabhuji.
Our desire to
Revolt of
satisfy our
nature.
own senses
We are bound
rather
by
than
We want,
satisfying our
we,
Krishna's
we
senses.
want to enjoy away
Sex
from
life,
Krishna.
sex life is a root cause of our conditioning. Avrutam jnanametena jnanino nityavairina kamarupena kaunteya dushpurvena nalena cha. A man's pure consciousness is covered by his enemy, and that enemy is in the form of lust, which can never be satisfied and which burns like fire. Okay, so now the root cause of our material existence is lust, and here we have to understand that one form of lust is sexual pleasure. Now that is our eternal enemy, and this can always make us retain here in this world. So we have to be very careful. Okay, that's why this world is called as what? Maitunya Agara. What is Maitunya Agara? That it's nothing but a prison house where the criminals are kept. What type of criminals are kept?
Lusty.
Criminals are bound by the sex life. It is there even in animals. It is there everywhere. It is there in all the species that exist. But the only opportunity that you get to get out of that is which opportunity?
Human form.
Human worth. Human body.
Human life.
Human body. But in human body also, people are separated by consciousness. So there are some people with low consciousness. Okay. Asatyam apratishtamte jagadahu raneshwaram aparaspara sambhutam kimanyat kama haitukam. So the demoniac people, what do they say? The demoniac people, they say that this world is just to satisfy our sex desire. We have all come here. This world is produced out of sex desire, and there is no other reason for this world apart from to satisfy our own desires or the lusty desires that we have. That is what the demoniac people say. But what does the Lord say? Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam hetu nanena kaunteya jagat viparivartate. Mayadhyakshena prakriti. He is telling the Lord, the demoniac people are saying, this world was created by sexual desire, and this world has been created for satisfying our sexual desire, nothing else. Okay, it's an accident. But what is Krishna telling? Krishna is telling, Mayadhyakshena prakriti. It is under my control. Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. So whatever is moving or unmoving is manifested from me. It is manifested from me. Okay, and it is by His rule. It is by the Lord's rule that they are created and destroyed again and again. So it is very difficult for a demoniac person to understand what the Lord says, and it is very difficult for him to digest what the Lord says. So that is why we have to understand here that in this particular verse, the most important thing is we have to hear from Shukadeva Goswami, because he is completely under the control of the Supreme Lord and he has heard the instructions as it is. Now here, if you see these set of verses in this third canto, actually the title of this chapter is what? Title of the third, this is the fourth chapter of the second canto. So what is the title?
Process of creation.
But where is the process of creation being discussed here? Is there any process of creation being discussed here? What is Shukadeva Goswami doing before discussing even the process of creation? He is glorifying. He is just glorifying the Supreme Lord. You know why? He is glorifying the Supreme Lord. In all these verses, he is actually paying obeisances, yes or no? Is he paying obeisances? Is he glorifying the Supreme Lord? What is he doing now? He was supposed to explain about Shukadeva Goswami was supposed to explain about the process of creation. Okay. Now, that was the first question, was that the first verse of this chapter is about that. But from the second verse, if you see, what is happening? It is just glorification that is going on. So there is a lot of glorification which is happening here, because whatever you speak comes from where?
From Krishna.
From Krishna.
Yeah. So that is very important. Okay. Also in this verse, if you see, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has set the rules for people in different order. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was himself a sannyasi. He was also a grihastha. Then he became a sannyasi. Now, when he became a sannyasi, he used to keep away. He is a Lord himself, but he used to keep away from women. Not because he has some irritation towards women, but because the goal of life is not to please women or to please the society. The goal of life is to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay. So he did not even allow women to. The point is, he wants to set an example. When the Lord does it, then the others. Yadyad acharati shreshta. Just imagine, among shreshta, he is the supreme, he is the topmost. So if the Lord is doing that, then what will common people do? Those who want to follow Chaitanya, first of all, those who are demoniac, I told you already, those who are demoniac, will not accept Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay. Now, those who are followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what will they learn when they see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is doing that? What will they learn? They will also understand that, okay, this I should avoid. Okay. So here he very clearly says that he was not even allowing women to bow down and pay obeisances to him. Now, all of you know why. And it is not because Lord Chaitanya was influenced by it, or not because Lord Chaitanya will get disturbed by it. It is because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knows what is best for the jivas in Kali Yuga, what needs to be done, what need not be done. Those things Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knows very well. So he wants to show by practical example. Okay. So that is a very rigid position of the sannyasi. That is why when you become a sannyasi, you can't stay at a place for a long time. You cannot relish all kinds of exotic foods. You should not get adjusted to a particular climate. You should not get adjusted to a particular, let's say a temple. You have to keep traveling. Your job is to just keep preaching, glorifying the Lord. That's why sannyasi's life is all about renunciation, which means that he has nothing to do except the service of the Lord. Okay. All the other in the what is that? Whether it is Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya or Shudra, whether it is Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha or Sannyasa, in all the other ashramas, whether it is Brahmacharya ashram, Grihastha ashram, Vanaprastha, Sannyasa, the expectation is the same in all the ashramas. But the rules and regulations change. For example, a Grihastha can interact with women, but the same Grihastha, when he becomes Sannyasi, can he interact? There is no need of unnecessary interaction with women when you become a sannyasi. Because sannyasi means what? You have retired. You have given up. You have given up means you have given up worldly interests or worldly association, but at the same time, for the service of the Lord, you will engage in the same worldly affairs, you will engage, but in the service of the Lord, not for anything else. That is why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is strict. Okay. Next. What else is discussed here? If you just scroll down, okay, I think more or less we covered everything in this particular verse. So here, basically, Shukadev Goswami is saying that the Yagyapati or the Pati is the Lord, he's the controller, he's the master, and our goal is to satisfy him. And how we can satisfy him? By hearing the instructions from Shukadev Goswami, who is, what is the term given for Shukadev Goswami here? He is
Velikam.
Gata Velikas. Okay? So he is free from ignorance, or he is free from misconceptions. Because he is free from misconceptions, he is fit to be heard from. And whom should we, from him, whom should we hear about? We should hear about the glories of the Supreme Lord. Okay, you can scroll down, Mataji, to the end of this verse, bottom to the last paragraph. You hear some vessel sound and somebody is in the kitchen or something.
Nandini Mataji, could you please mute?
Yeah. Okay. So here, Shukadev Goswami, if you see the last line, what is the last line? It basically summarizes the entire verse. It says, the Lord is therefore the guide of all the devotees. And as such, Shukadev Goswami is offering his due respects to the love-laden feelings. Okay, we'll go to the next verse. So here, if you see the entire system, all these verses are nothing but glorification. Okay, here but whom did Shukadev Goswami glorify? Shukadev Goswami has glorified the Lord. Okay, now you can all read the verse at convenience because we have less time. Okay, let's go to the translation. Okay. Okay, it is the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who gives liberation. By thinking of his lotus feet at every second, following in the footsteps of authorities, the devotee in trance can see the absolute. The devotee in trance can always. The devotee in trance. Hare Krishna, can all of you hear me?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah. So the devotee in trance can see the absolute truth. The learned mental speculators, however, think of him according to their whims. May the Lord be pleased with me. So who's telling this? Who's telling this? Shukadev Goswami. Shukadev Goswami, I said that Shukadev Goswami is just offering obeisances. He's glorifying the Supreme Lord. So what is he telling here? Here, in this particular verse, he's talking about classification of speakers. Okay, there are two kinds of speakers. Who are they? Let's read from the purport. Who wants to read the purport?
Can I
Prabhuji?
Shall I, Prabhuji?
Name whosoever says the names first.
Janki.
Janaki Mataji, yeah. Janaki, yeah? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, Mataji.
The mystic yogi, purport by his divine Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The mystic yogis, after a strenuous effort to control the senses, may be situated in a trance of yoga just to have a vision of the super soul within everyone. But the pure devotee, simply by remembering the Lord's lotus feet at every second, at once becomes established in real trance, because by such realization, his mind and intelligence are completely cleansed of the diseases of material enjoyment. The pure devotee thinks himself fallen into the ocean of birth and death, and incessantly prays to the Lord to lift him up. He only aspires to become a speck of transcendental dust at the lotus feet of the Lord. The pure devotee, by the grace of the Lord, absolutely loses all attraction for material enjoyment. And to keep free from contamination, he always thinks of the lotus feet of the Lord. King Kulashekara, a great devotee of the Lord, prayed, कृष्ण त्वदीय पद पंकज पंजरान्तम् अद्यैव मे विशतु मानस राजहंसः प्राण प्रयाण समये कपवात पित्ते कंतावरोधन विधौ स्मरणं कुतस्ते. Can you scroll a little up, Matri? My Lord Krishna, I pray that the swan of my mind may immediately sink down to the stems of the lotus feet of your Lordship and be locked in the network. Otherwise, at the time of my final breath, when my throat is choked up with cough, how will it be possible to think of you? There's an intimate relationship between the swan and the lotus stem. So the comparison is very appropriate. Without becoming a swan or Paramahamsa, one cannot enter into the network of the lotus feet of the Lord. As stated in the Brahma Samhita, the mental speculators, even by dint of learned scholarship, cannot even dream of the absolute truth by speculating over it for eternity. The Lord reserves the right of not being exposed to such mental speculators. And because they cannot enter into the network stem of the lotus feet of the Lord, all mental speculators differ in conclusion, and at the end, they make a useless compromise by saying as many conclusions as many ways, according to one's own inclination, yatha rucham. But the Lord is not like a shopkeeper trying to please all sorts of customers in the mental speculator exchange. The Lord is what he is, the absolute personality of God, and he demands absolute surrender unto him only. The pure devotee, however, by following the ways of previous acharyas or authorities, can see the Supreme Lord through the transparent medium of a bona fide spiritual master, anupashyanti. The pure devotee never tries to see the Lord by mental speculation, but by following in the footsteps of the acharyas. Mahajano ena gata, sa pantah. Therefore, there is no difference of conclusions amongst the Vaishnava acharyas regarding the Lord and the devotees. Lord Chaitanya asserts that the living entity Jiva is eternally the servitor of the Lord, and that he is simultaneously one with and different from the Lord. This tattva of Lord Chaitanya's is shared by all four sampradayas of the Vaishnava school, all accepting eternal servitude to the Lord even after salvation. And there is no authorized Vaishnava Acharya who may think of the Lord and himself as one. The humbleness of the pure devotee, who is 100% engaged in his service, puts the devotee of the Lord in a trance by which to realize everything. Because to the sincere devotees of the Lord reveals himself. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 10.10, the Lord, being the Lord of intelligence, is in everyone, even in the non-devotee, favors his devotee with proper intelligence, so that automatically the pure devotee is enlightened with a factual truth about the Lord and his different energies. The Lord is revealed not by one's speculative power or by one's verbal jugglery over the absolute truth. Rather, he reveals himself to a devotee when he is fully satisfied by the devotee's service attitude. Sukadeva Goswami is not a mental speculator or compromiser of the theory of as many ways, as many conclusions. Rather, he prays to the Lord only, invoking his transcendental pleasure. That is the way of knowing the Lord. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. So, thank you, Mataji. It was a very long purport again. So, here again, there's a comparison between mystic yoga and bhakti yoga. What is mystic yoga?
Mystic yoga is followed by Mayavadi's Prabhuji.
Like Siddhis, Prabhuji.
Ashtanga Yoga.
Ashtanga yoga, absolutely. So,
The
mystic
material
yoga,
desire.
yeah, mystic yoga is nothing but it also comes under Ashtanga yoga. So, the point here is that Srila Prabhupada has given a detailed lecture about this on, you can put in maybe Google and search lecture by Srila Prabhupada on August 4th, 1973. You can also see it in Veda base. Okay. So now he says that actually this mystic yoga involves nothing but Ashtanga yoga processes. Okay. Now in the stages of Ashtanga yoga, there are 8 processes. Okay. You all know that. But the point is, in the initial stage, Yama, Niyama, all those processes, the initial 4 processes, you have to do a lot of sense control yourself. You have to follow the rules and regulation, the do's and don'ts, and you have to put have the right asanas. Okay. And you should work hard in the Ashtanga yoga process initially. But later on, when you reach to dhyana and samadhi, at that time, your senses are already controlled. And in samadhi stage, what happens? You're remembering the Lord. Okay. The Lord who's seated in your heart. Okay. So you're remembering the Lord. But what next? This I had already discussed in some other class. But yes, what next after remembering the Lord? Or you're meditating on the Lord. Okay. Then what next? Is that enough? You just meditate and keep quiet.
Entering into the
Using devotional service to the Lord.
Yeah, you should do some work. If I always keep telling, wow, I like this person, I like my lecturer, I like him a lot, I like his classes, I just hear, and then what? I don't go to the exam, I don't write my exam. Is that enough? By just, yeah, and I fail in my exam. You're satisfied? So the point here is that you have done all the circles and you remember, now you are meditating on the Lord. But then what next? You have to render some devotional service to the Lord, correct? Is it okay if you just meditate and sit there? No, that is not the process. So controlling the sense through the mystic yoga process is very difficult. First of all, the process itself is sounding difficult, right? How many of us can do this? If ISKCON would have said that all of you do the Ashtanga yoga process and would have said that only by doing Ashtanga yoga you can reach the Lord. Can everybody do? Can a small child do?
No, Prabhuji.
Srila Prabhupada says, if I'll just eat a gulab jamun, I'll go back to Godhead. Can you do that in Ashtanga yoga process? By eating gulab jamun, will you go back to Godhead?
No, Prabhuji.
No, Prabhuji.
Srila Prabhupada started ISKCON with gulab jamun. So that is Bhakti Yoga. By love, if you give gulab jamun to the Lord will eat and give it back to you. Take it. And if you eat that, then the process of devotional service begins. Eating is also devotional service. Can anybody make it much simpler than this? So the point is, if we try to control the senses in a very hard way, it is very difficult. The process itself will be hard. Okay. The Ashtanga yoga process is itself very hard. It's not easy for anybody to follow and everybody to follow. Like somebody is having a broken bone. Can you sit in a posture which is recommended as a asana? One of the asana. Can you sit?
No,
Somebody
Prabhuji.
is
It is
having a
not
broken.
recommended in this yoga, Prabhuji. That yoga.
Yeah,
It is not
Prabhu, with
No, I'm not asking
bones
about a
also one
recommendation or
can't
not
sit.
recommendation. I'm asking a very simple question. Is it possible for a person who, in whichever yoga, okay, somebody is not having a leg, can he do Ashtanga yoga?
no,
Prabhuji, with full body and all bones intact also we cannot.
It's very
Sit
difficult.
for
So
you.
the point
Yeah.
is, most simplest process is bhakti. So that's why in one of the verses it says it is durdanta. Durdanta means formidable or very difficult. It is very difficult to execute Ashtanga yoga. It is not possible. Okay, but bhakti is the most simple. Even by eating, you can go back to Godhead. Somebody is eating prasadam. That itself will take him back to Godhead. Maybe not in this life, but he has begun the process. Nobody can say that he has not begun the process. So we should not think that by eating only I'll go back to Godhead. It's not like that. Eating it will make you come into the process of bhakti. That is why we give prasadam to those we don't offend, we don't commit the 10 offenses. One of the offenses is to preach to a person who is not interested about the Lord. Okay. Now, if you don't preach to him, then how will he come back? Do you want to save him also?
yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah, so how will you save him? So you will save him by giving him
Offering prasadam first.
you
Prasadam.
will give him rasgulla. He will say, will he say, I don't want this rasgulla? Can he say that? Okay, maybe he is diabetic. He may say, I don't want rasgulla. Then you will give him something else, paneer butter masala, offered to the Lord. So the point is, you can begin devotional service. Bhakti, it is very easy. Because it is Rishikesha, Rishikena, Sevanam. Which means the master of the senses is served through our senses. We use every sense of ours in the service of the Lord. So that is Rishikena, Rishikesha, Sevanam. Okay, that is Bhakti. Now, that is what is given prominence here in this particular verse. Okay. Now, also there is that reference in the purport. What is the reference? It says, Krishna Kulashekar Alvar. He says that Krishna Tvadiya Padapankaja Panjarantam Adyaiva me vishatu manasa rajahamsa. Prana prayana samaye kapavata pitte. Kantavarodha Kantavarodhana Vidhav Smaranam Kutaste. He's telling that at the time of my death, okay, my throat is choked up, and when there is kapha, vata, pitta, kapha, if there is kapha in your mouth, can you even chant? Or if you feel there is a lot of congestion, if you have a lot of congestion, is it an easy process? And that too, you're old, you're weak. At that time, is it possible for anybody to even remember the Lord?
No, Prabhu,
No,
difficult.
Prabhuji.
So, and Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti. Why does he say that? He says that, what is it? Tesham satata yuktanam. If you're constantly engaged in serving me, I'll give you the understanding by which you can come back to me. So even at the time of death, will you withdraw the statement? If you have done devotional service throughout your life, okay? And Krishna is assuring that even at the time of death, I'll give you that remembrance, okay? So he says that those who are constantly Tesham satata yuktanam, satatam. Okay. Satatam kirtayantomam. So everywhere it says satatam, satatam. So Tesham satata yuktanam. Bhajatam priti purvakam. So the ingredient is what? What is the ingredient?
Satatam.
Satatam, continue.
Satatam.
Love
Continue.
with love, Prabhuji.
Ingredient is love. Continuous is yes. Consistent is yes. But the ingredient should be love. And how will you develop love? Is it easy to love? I'll ask you to love Murti. Why people are against Murti worship? Because they are not able to develop love. They are not able to develop attraction. Now, to develop attraction, they should have knowledge. And from where will they hear? To get knowledge, you should hear. So your senses should be in control. Otherwise, you cannot hear. If your senses are not in control, the first place itself, it gets destroyed. So that is why Shravanam is the first process. Hearing is the first quality. Somebody may be doing Harinam Sankirtan. Accidentally, it goes to your ear. It gives you benefit. But somebody, you're staying in Uganda or somewhere where nobody is doing Harinam Sankirtan. Okay. But somebody is conducting a class on YouTube. It's out of your own will. You have free will to make a choice. Now you should put that effort to go and hear. If you don't hear, there will be no transformation. Because if somebody says Murti, idol worship, deity worship, something, he says, okay, somebody has made a form out of the stone and these people are all worshipping. Actually, nothing like that exists. Yes, he will not believe. Why should we worship a stone? Everything is created by the Lord, only one stone. Why? So that if you have to understand, then how will you understand? You will only understand if you follow the previous Acharya. That is why in this verse it is said, Mahajano yena gatassa panta. So if you will actually follow the Acharyas, previous Acharyas, you don't try to invent something new. Oh, this is not possible, so this will not exist. It is not like that. Are you the master of all the knowledge that exists? You are not. Okay? Or neither am I. None of us have the complete knowledge of anything. Forget Krishna. Anything. How did it come into existence? Anything which you see around you also, we have no complete knowledge of it. So the knowledge, the most important knowledge we all discuss, the most confidential knowledge, Raja Vidya, Raja Guhyam, is Krishna consciousness. And who gives this knowledge? The knowledge is given by
Krishna himself.
Lord himself.
yes, but who gives it through? The Lord has not come and given us. Right now, the Lord is not talking to us.
Spiritual master, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Spiritual master.
That is why it is very important.
Yeah,
that is why it is very important that everybody should accept a spiritual master. Because the Lord will not personally come and talk to each. He's seated in everybody's heart. But first, he wants to see whether you are surrendering to someone. He himself went to Sandipani Muni. Okay. Does he have to go to Sandipani Muni? Krishna has accepted Sandipani Muni as spiritual master. For what? He is the master of all the.
An example.
Okay, just an example.
He's a master of everything. But he's showing that what you should do. So a spiritual master has seen the truth. Okay. Yasya prasado bhagavat prasado. So the point is, if you want to reciprocate with Krishna, then your first point of contact is your spiritual master. That is why. Why is the spiritual master your first point of contact? Because he executes exactly what the scriptures say, and he's Acharya. He does by action. He shows practically how it needs to be done. Therefore, you should also associate with spiritual master and you should follow his instructions. That is what is a duty. Okay. So why is Shukadev Goswami saying that here? He's saying that here because if you go to the last line, scroll down, Mataji. Scroll down. Yeah. Shukadev Goswami is not a mental speculator. He is not coming. See, if you see the last two lines, it says Shukadev Goswami is not a mental speculator or compromiser of the theory. Okay. He prays to the Lord only, invoking his transcendental pleasure. This is the way of knowing the Lord. Okay. So whatever comes from your mouth, now whatever I'm talking, see, whatever preparations we do, at the end of the day, who is going to decide what is coming out of our mouth? Something comes out of the mouth which is not controllable, correct? Yeah, after I speak, can it be controlled? I can just use some words and create friction in this group. Can I do that?
Yes, Prabhuji.
And I can use some words and create some love and affection. Is it possible?
Yes.
Yes.
I can change. Right now, you are all hearing. I can change the feelings in your heart if I speak in a very, very nice way, very pleasing way. But at the same time, if I speak very harsh, can I change the feelings? You are not even seeing. You don't even know where I'm sitting right now. But sitting here, I can control your feelings. Can I do that?
Yes.
By
Yes,
Yes.
Prabhuji.
Tone
Yes,
and the
Yes,
words.
Prabhuji.
and that words is controlled by whom?
Bhagavan.
You may want to,
Lord,
you may
Lord,
want to
Paramatma.
please everybody. You will go with the intention that, I want to please everyone in this audience. I want to make sure that everybody gets the right message. But who will make sure that whether you're going to please or whether you're going to create a havoc there? Who's going to make sure of that?
The willing which I make is
Paramatma.
permitted by Bhagavan.
The Lord is the decider ultimately. You may be the big speaker, a big Bhagavatam speaker. You can go and sit and address an audience of 10,000 people. Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol. Hari
Hare
Bol.
Krishna.
We lost.
Sorry. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, yes,
Yes,
Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu. Yes.
So basically, the controller of your speech is also the Lord. What you are going to speak, and whether it is going to be pleasing to the audience, whether it is not going to be pleasing, whether you are going to speak the truth, not going to. So why is Shukadev Goswami saying that here? He is offering obeisances. This is the reason why in the beginning of every Bhagavatam class, we offer obeisances so that I don't commit any offenses and I speak the truth and I repeat what is there in the Shastras. We go to the next verse. Yeah, we go to the next verse, Mother. Okay. Okay, so we'll go to the translation. Don't have time. Yeah, scroll down, Mataji. Translation. Who wants to read? Purport. Who wants to read?
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Shanti Ramachandra.
Before Shanti Mataji, who said some name came up?
Deepa, I said.
Deepa Mataji. Okay. After that, Shanti Mataji. Okay. So I'll read the translation. May the Lord, who in the beginning of the creation amplified the potent knowledge of Brahma from within his heart and inspired him with full knowledge of creation and of his own self, and who appeared to be generated from the mouth of Brahma, be pleased with me. Okay. Purport.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. As we have already discussed herein before, the Lord as supersoul of all living beings from Brahma to the insignificant ant endows all with the required knowledge potent in every living being. A living being is sufficiently potent to possess knowledge from the Lord in the proportion of 50/64 or 78% of the full knowledge acquirable. Since the living being is constitutionally part and parcel of the Lord, he is unable to assimilate all the knowledge that the Lord possesses himself. In the conditioned state, the living being is subject to forgetting everything after a change of body, known as death. This potent knowledge is again inspired by the Lord from within the heart of every living being, and it is known as the awakening of knowledge, for it is comparable to awakening from sleep or unconsciousness. This awakening of knowledge is under the full control of the Lord, and therefore we find in the practical world different grades of knowledge in different persons. This awakening of knowledge is neither an automatic nor a material interaction. The supply source is the Lord himself, Dhiyampati. For even Brahma is also the subject to this regulation. Brahma is also subject to this regulation of the Supreme Creator. In the beginning of the creation, Brahma is born first without any father and mother, because before Brahma there were no other living beings. Brahma is born from the lotus, which grows from the abdomen of the Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and therefore he is known as Aja. This Brahma or Aja is also a living being, part and parcel of the Lord, But being the most pious devotee of the Lord, Brahma is inspired by the Lord to create subsequent to the main creation by the Lord through the agency of material nature. Therefore, neither the material nature nor Brahma is independent of the Lord. The material scientist can merely observe the reactions of the material nature without understanding the direction behind such activities, as a child can see the action of electricity without any knowledge of the powerhouse engineer. This imperfect knowledge of the material scientist is due to a poor fund of knowledge. The Vedic knowledge was therefore first impregnated within Brahma, and it appears that Brahma distributed the Vedic knowledge. Brahma is undoubtedly the speaker of the Vedic knowledge, but actually he was inspired by the Lord to receive such transcendental knowledge as it directly transcends from the Lord. The Vedas are therefore called Apaurusheya, or not imparted by any created being. Before the creation of the Lord was there Narayana Paro Avyaktat, and therefore the words spoken by the Lord are vibrations of transcendental sound. There is a gulf of difference between the two qualities of sound, namely Prakrita and Aprakrita. The physicist can deal only with the Prakrita sound or sound vibrated in the material sky, and therefore we must know that the Vedic sounds recorded in symbolic expressions cannot be understood by anyone within the universe unless and until one is inspired by the vibration of supernatural aprakrita sound, which descends in the chain of disciplic succession from the Lord to Brahma, from Brahma to Narada, from Narada to Vyasa, and so on. No mundane scholar can translate or reveal the true import of the Vedic mantras, hymns. They cannot be understood unless one is inspired or initiated by the authorized spiritual master. The original spiritual master is the Lord himself, and the succession comes down through the sources of parampara as clearly stated in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So unless one receives the transcendental knowledge from the authorized parampara, one should be considered useless, nishphala mata, even though one may be greatly qualified in the mundane advancements of arts or science. Sukdev Goswami is praying to the Lord by dint of being inspired from within by the Lord, so that he could rightly explain the facts and figures of creation as inquired by Maharaja Parikshit. A spiritual master is not a theoretical speculator like the mundane scholar, but is Shrotriyam Brahma Nishtham. Hare Krishna.
Okay, so what is the most important thing in this verse? First thing, we all have something which we possess. Do we all have ownership on something like house, land, car, something you will have? Yes or no? All of you have something that you own.
Yes.
What happens to that when you die?
It gets passed on to the next generation.
Who passes it on?
They take it themselves.
Ownership transfers.
Oh, sorry, what are you saying, Madzi? They can't take it themselves like that. Okay. What did you say? Second.
Yeah, succession process.
Okay. What else?
Or
By
we
will,
fully
by
pass it
writing
on
a
before
will.
dying.
Will remain there only, Prabhu, even if after we die.
Yeah, it will anyway remain there. Even whether we remain or not, don't remain. Even if we don't come into this world, it will remain there.
No, we never knew what will happen after we pass away, Prabhu. Whether they take it or they sell or whatever.
No, in case, see now what is happening? For example, you have something. You are a owner of something. Ideally speaking, what happens after you leave? What happens? Ideally speaking.
Ownership
They will
gets
not be
Most
able
of our
to take that.
cases,
Process to the children.
Authorized legal heirs.
Absolutely. So now the authority is very important. Okay. Finally, there is control of that particular property of yours is also controlled by somebody. Even now, for that matter. For example, you are the owner of your house. Can you say that I cannot come and for some reason I want to make a road there? The government decides. Can they come and lay a road there by destroying your house?
Yes.
No, Prabhu.
They
can't
can.
just
The government can do. They come. They take permission from you, and they give you a sufficient compensation, and then they execute their plan. Even in the documents that you may have of your properties, the government gives you a right only to 99 years. Your property is yours. You may live for 150 years. That's okay. But after 99 years, you have to go back to the government and get a permission, telling that I want to continue using this property. So the point here is that property is not even yours. The own property which you say is mine. On top of that, you are paying tax, which means that the government is collecting money from you for giving that land, exclusive ownership of that land to you. That means that there is somebody who's governing. Okay. Similarly, when you leave your body, what is that next class? Sorry, I didn't see what's okay. So similarly, when you leave your body, who is going to transfer this knowledge from one body to another? Whatever here Krishna is saying that Swalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Okay. And also what happens as the soul goes from one body to another, there are some things that it carry. Okay. Now the point is the spiritual activities which you have done carries on to the next life. Who decides that?
Krishna.
Lord.
Do you remember when you take birth, how much you have done in your last life? Do you never, okay, forget taking birth. Do you remember now? How much did you do in your last life? Do you remember?
No.
No,
No,
Prabhu.
Prabhuji.
So the Lord here, Shukadeva Goswami is telling that it is He who is the Dhiyampati. Dhiyampati means He is the one who is giving the source. He is the supply source. That is why when you are actually speaking about the Lord, you should actually take the blessings of the Lord. You should take the blessings of the Acharyas, because you are getting this knowledge because He is making you remember. He is the one who is making you remember that. Okay. So now we may all say that, father, mother, that this, but for Brahma, there is no father, there is no mother. He came from the navel of the Lord. He appeared. No, he does not have father and mother. So who reveals the knowledge to him? Who's the Acharya who revealed knowledge to him? To Brahma. It was revealed. How?
The
Krishna.
Lord.
Lord himself.
Lord reveals it.
Lord.
And the Lord seated in the heart, He reveals it to you. Just like how when you rob something, what will the heart tell you? Very good, keep robbing, keep stealing daily. Will there be encouragement or will there be fear? No, don't rob, don't do this. Who is giving that? Is somebody coming and speaking to you? Or there is some revelation which happens to you that this is not right, don't do it. Does it happen or not? Let's say you're going on one way, you're
Yes,
going on the
Prabhu.
wrong side. On some road, you're going on the wrong side. Does somebody say, don't do this in your heart?
That guilt comes.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Who's saying that? That is the Supreme Lord. He's seated in everybody's heart as what? Garbhodakshay Vishnu, Karanodakshay Vishnu, or Shirodakshay Vishnu? Shirodakshay Vishnu. He sits in everybody's heart as Shirodakshay Vishnu, and he's guiding you continuously. Okay, so this is what we need to know from this particular verse. And also the knowledge, the Vedic knowledge was first impregnated to Brahma. Okay, so who did that activity? That knowledge was impregnated by the Supreme Lord Himself. That is why the Vedas are called as Apaurusheya, which means that it is not man-made. Paurusheya means something which is made by man, and Apaurusheya means something which is not made by any created living being. Any created, which means that somebody who is undergoing creation, that means that there is some creator behind him. Yes or no? If somebody is getting created, which means that there is some creator behind him. Just now, Prabhupada gave an example here that the child is seeing that, okay, I switch on the light, the electricity comes. I switch on the fan starts rotating. Okay, but is there somebody behind that activity? You are saying, okay, you switch on, it comes. But is there some electric power station working behind? Yes.
Yes, Prabhu. Yes.
Yes,
So
Prabhuji.
somebody controlling the power station? Yes. So the
Yes.
control of Supreme Lord. Okay. Now that is what we have to understand, that the Vedas are Apaurusheya, which means that no human being or no created being has actually written this. It has been transferred by the Lord Himself. He has given it first to Brahma, and from Brahma to
Narada.
Narada, from Narada to
Vyasdeva. Vyasdeva.
Vasudeva to Shukadeva Goswami. Okay.
Shukdev Goswami.
So he is now repeating it as it is. Now, also one thing, a person who is physically attached to the body, he can only relate to the sounds which come from the body, and he can say, yes, a crow can only make this kind of sound, because why? He sees the crow and he knows, okay, this is how the crow does. Okay. Or he sees a donkey and he says, the donkey only does this sound, or the elephant does this sound. He knows because he can relate. Yes or no?
Yes.
If I say Kingfisher makes this sound, can you verify it?
No.
But can you verify the source of the Vedic sounds?
No.
No.
Because it is not, it is aprakrita, which means prakrita and aprakrita. Aprakrita means that which you cannot verify through your senses. You have to have faith. First of all, you read so many verses. We all read so many verses. Okay. Is it possible for somebody to sit and write so many verses? Practically, you just think about it. Srila Prabhupada has put so much of effort, but Srila Prabhupada also translated it. He took it from the authorized source, translated. He put it. But was this already existing?
Yes.
So that is supernatural sound. That is what is called a prakrita. And prakrita means what you can see around you, all the sounds. Like, for example, somebody calls on your phone and says, hi, I'm XYZ. Okay, hi, I am Narendra Modi. You have heard his voice. Have you seen him? You have not seen, but you have heard his voice, correct? Some of you may have seen him, I don't know.
Yes,
Okay.
Prabhuji.
You have heard
Yes,
his voice.
Prabhuji.
Talks to you, okay, this is Narendra Modi's voice. Sounds like that, correct? Because you have seen, you have heard that voice. But aprakrita, what is supernatural? These Vedic sounds that you are seeing, or these shlokas, all these explanations that are giving, the shlokas that we are discussing, these are not prakrita. These are something which we have not heard here. So it is coming from the Supreme Lord. Yes or no?
Yes,
And
Prabhuji.
Yes,
it is coming in a disciplic succession. So you have to understand that unless it comes in a disciplic succession, somebody can quote Sanskrit, everybody knows. I can also write some shlokas on my own. But we have to understand that it is nishphala. If you read whatever I write on my own, okay, it does not give the result of what Shukadeva Goswami is trying to say. Because Shukadeva Goswami is giving what Krishna has given to Brahma. And you are giving whatever comes to your mind. So it is called nishphala mata, which means that it gives no result. I can write whatever I want, but finally, if the result has to come, you have to write what Krishna has given. You cannot write your own on your own. That is why you need a spiritual master. That is why you need to understand that I can say whatever I feel like, but finally, why does Srila Prabhupada say Bhagavad Gita as it is? As it is means as the way Krishna wanted it to be heard. That's how he has written. Okay. So we'll go to the next verse. Oh, sorry, go to the last line of the verse, Mataji. I'm very sorry. Please go to the last line. Okay. Shukadeva Goswami is praying, again he's praying by dint of being inspired from within the Lord so that he could rightly explain the facts and figures. See, Shukadeva Goswami, he is heard directly from his father, Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is incarnation of the Lord. Okay. Now, still he's praying so much to speak this to others. You know why? He's praying so much to speak this to others. Why?
Only if the Lord
That is also enabled by Lord only.
One is, yes, he needs the mercy of the Lord to speak to the audience. Second is, the hearers also should be able to understand. They should also be qualified. So he's praying intensely for both. We'll go to the next verse. Okay. So it's not just about the speaker, it's also about the hearer. They should also, I can keep telling, do this, do this, do this, do this. But if you are not, if it is not going into your ear, what is the use? There is no use. So we'll go to this particular verse. Mataji, go to the translation. Maybe you can read the purport. I'll just tell you the translation and the gist of it. Yeah. Okay. May the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who enlivens the materially created bodies of the elements by lying down within the universe, and who is his Purusha incarnation, causes the living being to be subjected to the 16 divisions of material modes, which are his generator, be pleased to decorate my statements. Okay. Subbarao Prabhu, you can read. You can put your hand on row. Subbarao Prabhu, you want to read? Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, may
Hare
I?
Krishna, Prabhuji.
Sorry, Shanti Mataji, you read half. Sorry, Prabhu. Shanti Mataji already said she'll read half, then you read half. Okay. Or you read the next verse. Subbarao Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Conclude in 10 minutes. Okay. Yeah.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. As a fully dependent devotee, Sukadeva Goswami, unlike a mundane man who is proud of his own capability, invokes the pleasures of the personality of God so that his statements may be successful and be appreciated by the hearers. The devotee always thinks of himself as instrumental for anything successfully carried out, and he declines to take credit for anything done by himself. The godless atheist wants to take all credit for activities, not knowing that even a blade of grass cannot move without the sanction of the Supreme Spirit, the personality of Godhead. Sukadeva Goswami therefore wants to move by the direction of the Supreme Lord, who inspired Brahma to speak the Vedic wisdom. The truth described in the Vedic literatures are not theories of mundane imagination, nor are they fictitious, as the less intelligent class of men sometimes think. The Vedic truths are all perfect descriptions of the factual truth without any mistake or illusion, and Sukadeva Goswami wants to present the truths of creation not as a metaphysical theory of philosophical speculation, but as the actual facts and figures of the subject, since he would be dictated to by the Lord exactly in the same manner as Brahmaji was inspired. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 15.15, the Lord is himself the father of the Vedanta knowledge, and it is he only who knows the factual purport of the Vedanta philosophy. So there is no greater truth than the principles of religion mentioned in the Vedas. Such Vedic knowledge or religion is disseminated by authorities like Sukadeva Goswami because he is a humble devotional servitor of the Lord who has no desire to become a self-appointed interpreter without authority. That is the way of explaining the Vedic knowledge, technically known as the Parampara system or dissenting.
Yeah. Okay, Matsuji. I think Subbarao Prabhu can read from there.
Yes, Prabhuji. The intelligent man can see without mistake that any material creation, whether one's own body or a fruit or a flower, cannot beautifully grow up without the spiritual touch. The greatest intelligent man of the world or a greatest man of the science can present everything very beautifully only insofar as the spirit life is there, or in so much as the spiritual touch is there. Therefore, the source of all truth is the Supreme Spirit and not gross matter, as wrongly conceived by the gross materialists. We get information from the Vedic literature that the Lord himself first entered the vacuum of the material universe, and thus all things gradually developed one after another. Similarly, Lord is situated as a localized Paramahamsa, Paramatma, in every individual being, and everything is done by him very beautifully. The 16 principal creative essence, namely earth, water, fire, air, sky, and 11 sense organs, first developed from the Lord himself, and were thereby shared by the living entities. Thus, the material elements were created for the enjoyment of the living entities. The beautiful arrangement behind all material manifestations is therefore made possible by the energy of the Lord. And the individual living entity can only pray to the Lord to understand it properly. Since the Lord is the supreme entity, different from Sukadeva Goswami, the prayer can be offered to him. The Lord helps the living entity to enjoy material creation, but he is aloof from such false enjoyment. Sukadeva prays for the mercy of the Lord, not only for being helped personally in presenting the truth, but also for helping others to whom would like to speak. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, bro. So here in this verse, the glorification of the Lord is important, but simultaneously, so bro, you can put your hand down. Simultaneously, we have to understand that it's not just about the glorification of the Lord. Sukadeva Goswami is praying to the Lord intensely so that he can explain this very clearly to the listeners. They should be able to appreciate this knowledge. That is very important, because I can speak the truth, perfect truth, but if the listener is not able to appreciate it, then what is the use? There is no use. So similarly, that is one of his prayers is this. The second prayer is, he does not have a materialistic speaker when he tries to speak. What does he try to show to the people? He wants to show the amount of knowledge that he possesses. Okay, but if you see here, just to explain the process of creation, Sukadeva Goswami is actually giving so many verses of glorification. He is paying obeisances in so many verses, and finally he's paying all these obeisances because he knows that Mattas Smritir Jnanam Apohanam Cha Sarvasya Chaham Hrudi Sannivishta. The Lord is seated in everyone's heart, and he gives intelligence, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So we have to understand that intelligence, very important, because if somebody asks you a question, you should be able to reply. Who gives the answer? Actually, you find it very, if you don't have the will of the Lord, you can speak anything what you feel like, and the other person may not be convinced. So here, his prayer is also one, I'm speaking the truth, that is okay. But second, the listeners who are actually hearing me, they should also be given sufficient intelligence to understand what I'm trying to say, and this should transform them. So basically, he's trying to transform, not just, Sukadeva Goswami is not just trying to transform whom?
The hearers.
Hearers. Parikshit Maharaj.
So question is from Parikshit Maharaj. So he's not trying to satisfy only Parikshit Maharaj. He's trying to satisfy the entire audience present there. Okay. So that is what is the conclusion of this particular verse, that both the speaker and the hearers have to be, there should be a change of heart for both of these people. Okay. And that can be done only by the words spoken by the mouth, the intelligence given by the Lord, and the remembrance of the Lord. These are the three things which will influence that conversation and which can be satisfying and pleasing to the hearers. Okay. Go to the next verse, the 24th verse. Mataji, what happened? Disappeared. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. No problem. So in the next two verses also, basically, there is a glorification of the Supreme Lord itself. And again, most importantly, in the next verse, what is happening is Shukadeva Goswami is glorifying Vyasadeva. He's telling that, he is Vedase. Vedase means he's the compiler of all the transcendental knowledge. So all the Vedas are revealed to him by whom?
Brahmaji.
Yes. No. Vyasadeva. To
To
whom?
Vyasdev. To who?
Yeah.
To Vyasdev
Vyasadeva.
from Brahmaji.
Then Narada Muni?
Narad.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So the point here is that he's Vedase, he's compiler. He got the knowledge, but the knowledge has to be actually compiled. So he's also thanking his father, Srila Vyasadeva, and he's telling that it is because of your commentary that I'm able to, without you passing on the information as it is to me, I would not be able to speak about this here. Okay. And also he speaks about, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes about Sridhar Swami. How many of you know who is Sridhar Swami? Sridhar Swami. Srila Prabhupada writes at many places in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, many places that Sridhar Swami said.
Yeah, commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yes. Who is Sridhar Swami? In the Bhagavad Gita, you have a have you seen the disciplic succession in our Bhagavad Gita? Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. Have you seen? The disciplic succession in our Bhagavad Gita, you would have seen that we have 32 prominent acharyas. Srila Prabhupada is the last. Okay. So basically, Sridhar Swami appeared around the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, basically, 100 years before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Somewhere between, in the 14th century, end of 13th century, beginning of 14th century, that's when Sridhar Swami had appeared. And he has given elaborate commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam. This was also accepted by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was born when? How many years have passed?
500 years back.
500 years ago.
500, it was on 1486. That's when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. So we have crossed 500. We are going to 550 very soon when it becomes 2026, not 2026, 2036. That time, it will be 550 years from the time Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. Okay. Now, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also praised Sridhar Swami. So there are conversations in Chaitanya Charitamrita where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also has praised Sridhar Swami. In fact, there is one particular pastime where Vallabhacharya. So Vallabhacharya, he says that I've made an excellent presentation of Bhagavata literature. I made an excellent presentation of Bhagavatam literature. So, and I'm sure that nobody can beat it. When he said that to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, first he wanted to damage his pride. Okay. And he said that he should be, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed Vallabhacharya that you should have, first of all, humility, that you should not have that pride that you are superior than everybody else. And he says that Sridhar Swami's Srimad Bhagavatam is more elaborate. He doesn't, condemn Vallabhacharya, or he doesn't say that, your Srimad Bhagavatam is not up to the mark. He says that Sridhar Swami Maharaj, commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam is also very elaborate and also perfect. And he said that you should actually follow the predecessors. You should not show your pride by thinking that I'm better than the past acharyas. You cannot be. You have to follow. So this is one example which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said. Okay. And basically why this discussion has come is because the entire, again, in the scriptures also, you have to understand that there are different Sampradaya acharyas. We should never say that I'm better than the previous one. Okay. I cannot be. The knowledge has been given to me by the previous acharya, so I cannot be better than the previous acharya. So that is one example which again Shukadeva Goswami is trying to set here. Okay. Next, in the final verse, which is the 25th verse, you can share it on the screen, Mataji. Here also it is mentioned that Krishna is the source of all the arts, all the art forms that you are seeing, whether it is dance, whether it is music, whether it is decorations, or whether it is dressing. Who's the source of all this? Who's the source of all this? Dance, music. We can say it is Krishna, but how did Krishna do it? If you see the Rasa dance, the Rasa Leela which happens, there is a dance. It is a dance, correct? So who's performing that dance?
Krishna with gopis.
With his intimate people, he performs the Rasa dance. So he is the origin of dance. Music. Does Krishna play a flute?
Yes.
So the music also, and Brahma also, Narada Muni also says, Deva Dattam Imam Veena. The Veena which Narada Muni has, that was presented to him by whom? The Lord himself. He only gave that Veena to Narada Muni. Like that, music also comes from the Lord. And similarly, the dressing and decoration. Krishna is not like a, simple dress, nothing. He's actually wearing all the ornaments. He's well decorated. He's wearing jewels. He's having the peacock feather. He has a crown. He has all that. He wears tilak. So these decorations are also coming from the Lord. We learn from there. That's why when we have an altar, when we have deities, we have all the decorations on the altar. Okay. So, yes. So this is the point that we have to understand, that all the rasas, all the artistic activities, whether it is music, whether it is dance, any other kind of interactions which a devotee has with the Lord, is all coming from the Supreme Lord himself. So basically, if you go to the last line of this verse, the 25th verse, Mataji, you can scroll down to the bottom. I'll stop here. We'll go to the last line of this verse. 25th. You're on the right verse. You have to just go to the last line. Okay, last paragraph. So Shukadeva Goswami therefore prayed for the mercy of the Lord, so that he might be able to repeat the very same message that was spoken directly by the Lord to Brahma, and here by Lord to Brahma, and what was directly spoken from Brahma to Narada. Therefore, the statements of creation explained by Shukadeva Goswami are not at all as the mundaners suggest, but one who hears these messages and tries to assimilate them gets perfect information of the material creation. So now, with this, we end this particular chapter. So, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much for hearing. If you have any questions, you can ask. Otherwise, we'll stop. I know it's late. I'm very sorry. But yes, if you have to cover 6 verses, it may take time. Yes. Okay. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you, Master.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Anyone
Wonderful
has any
class.
questions to
Dandat
ask?
pranam.
Okay. I think all
No
of them.
questions, Prabhu. Yeah, we can end
Yeah.
the session then.
Thank you so much, Mother. Okay.
Thank you,
Acha kal.
Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Dandat pranam.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you,
Dandat pranam,
thank you,
Prabhu.
Prabhuji. Dandat
Krishna
pranam.
Krishna Prabhupada
Hare
Ki
Krishna.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai and Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari. Bol Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Meet again
Thank you,
tomorrow.
Prabhu.
Hare
1:30
Krishna. Thank you so much,
Bol
Prabhuji.
Hare
Dandat pranam.
Krishna
Thank you,
Prabhu.
Prabhuji. Dandat
Hare
pranam.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu, I'll end the session.